Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me for this segment, we have Sara Mehle, Index Research Strategist with Nasdaq Investment Intelligence, to discuss Meta's milestones since listing on Nasdaq in 2012 and its contribution to the Nasdaq-100. Sara, it's great to see you as always. Welcome back to Trade Talks. And this is such an interesting story to tell because we have a generation of investors, we have a generation of analysts and strategists who perhaps were still in school when Facebook hit the scene or Meta hit the scene.
Absolutely. I think, I still remember the day that I was told about Facebook, when I was still using MySpace and how it was such a better alternative when you had to have a college address, to sign up for an account. But this week marks Facebook's 20th birthday, which is wild. So we just celebrated the Nasdaq 100's 39th. This week, again, Facebook's 20th. And so I wanted to dig in a little. And Facebook and now Meta platforms IPO'd in May of 2012 on the Nasdaq Stock Exchange. So that day it was added to the Nasdaq Composite. 7 months later, it was added to the Nasdaq 100, and it's been a holding in the Nasdaq 100 ever since. So since that time, since being added in December of 12, it's up 1,600%, while the Nasdaq 100 is up 560. So it's been a major contributor, actually one of the top 5 contributors behind Microsoft, Apple, NVIDIA, and Amazon. Right now, it has about a 4.8% weighting in the Nasdaq 100. The highest was around 6% when that was back in 2017. And then I just wanted to show some breakdowns in terms of the revenue right now. So they report financial statements in 2 segments, the family of apps and then their reality labs. So you can think of that as their AR, VR. Really not a even split, as you'll see. 99% is that family of apps and advertising. And the other 1% is to that, kind of the metaverse virtual reality space. But like you said, a very interesting company. And I think it's changed all of our lives,
Yeah, it certainly has, Sara. And it has a global societal impact. You can't almost wrap your head around not just the way that we communicate, but as your next slide shows, it's across major verticals, some of them even sectors within indexes that we cover.
Absolutely, as you mentioned. So it's had a profound impact on society. It changed the way we communicate, how we access information, and how we just interact online. It connects billions of people around the world, which is incredible, every single day, enabling users to maintain relationships, rally for social causes, and share life experiences. Just a personal note, like my father was in the military. And so when I moved away from my friends, we literally had to either call each other or write letters. And now I am reconnected with a lot of those friends, 20 years later, through Facebook. But it really is just a life-changing product in terms of Facebook. But also, it's driven digital advertising, the way that e-commerce and businesses are able to market and really target those audiences very specifically. So, driving consumer engagement. And then also just, again, content consumption. So influencing the way that content is not only consumed, but also distributed. And then, they're making advances now in the AR, VR space, almost like its own, subsector within tech and, looking towards the future. And, no doubt that it's been in the middle of some controversial issues, but it has responded with some really powerful AI-driven tools to combat some of these issues, and they really have set the standards for other platforms.
Yeah, it's so interesting, Sara, that you brought up how you were communicating with your friends. I often thought, having lived through and worked in the city during 9/11, what if social apps such as Facebook, X, Insta, Snap were available where you could communicate? I mean, the only way that you were able to communicate was word of mouth. And if you were able to access a cell phone and get cell service, so it has changed things in so many ways. Let's take a look at your last slide here. Let's talk about specific milestones to Meta.
So as I mentioned, Facebook was 20 years ago, but we look back 12 years ago to when Meta IPO'd on the Nasdaq Stock Exchange. So I went year by year to pull out some interesting things that we've seen along the way. I mean, it's really hard sometimes to remember what life was like, without social media, but then also without some of these features. So we've seen graph search, which dug in a little deeper there. And that means that users can search on interests, very specifics versus just a page or a person's name. Now you can search for basically anything in that search bar and just the way that results are presented. let's see, Facebook Live, Facebook Stories, Facebook Dating. During COVID, there were some COVID-19 resources, as you mentioned, getting information out there to the masses, the metaverse, and then AR and VR. And now we know, we've been talking about this a lot, that the Meta is one of the Magnificent Seven, part of the Nasdaq-100. And one thing I did want to mention here is a week ago today, Meta hit an all-time high. Last week, it had a blowout earnings report where they announced some buybacks and a dividend increase, and they reported an $8 billion revenue increase year over year, so 25%, and a new net income increase of $9.4 billion, so a 201% increase year over year. And that day, so a week ago today, it jumped 200 billion in one day, and that was the largest one-day jump in Wall Street history. So again, it printed an all-time high then too. But I think that this is just another reminder and a good, amazing example that the Nasdaq 100 truly is the home for innovation. Key contributors like Meta really demonstrate that. The Nasdaq 100 reflects and really helps drive trends, technological trends and market trends around the world.
Yeah, it certainly does, Sarah. Thank you. This was an awesome update. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.